She stood in the middle of my driveway, phone in one hand, the other waving wildly toward the police cruiser that had just pulled up. Her voice rang out across the street, loud enough for everyone within 5 houses to hear. There he is. That's the man. He's trespassing and refusing to leave my property. It was my property. I hadn't said a word yet. Just stood there with my arms crossed, watching her put on a full show. My neighbors peeked out through blinds, some pretending to water their lawns just to witness the drama unfold. You could feel the tension crawling up the air like heat off asphalt. The officers stepped out slowly. One of them looked young, probably fresh out of academy. The other, a bit older, more experienced. They glanced from Karen to me. She kept going. He's violent. He threatened me. He doesn't even live here. I want him gone. Arrest him now. That part made me raise an eyebrow. I'd lived here for 6 months. Paid cash for the house. And Karen knew it. She knew it well because from the moment I moved in, she made it her personal mission to remind me that I didn't belong in her neighborhood. Still, I didn't speak. Not yet. The young officer reached for his radio, but the older one stared at me a little too long. Then something shifted in his eyes. Recognition. Karen didn't notice. She was too busy giving her version of the story. Loud. Dramatic. Full of made-up rules and HOA threats. He's using a fake name. He won't give me ID. He's squatting. He parked his rusty truck right in front of my yard and refused to move it. That truck? It's a 2022 F-150. And it was parked in my driveway. The moment finally came. I reached into my back pocket, slowly, calmly. Pulled out my badge. "Good afternoon, officers," I said. "Detective Mark Rivers. Off duty, of course. This is my home. And I believe this woman just made a false 911 call." Silence. Karen's mouth literally dropped open. No sound. No hand waving now. Just that wide-eyed, pale-faced what just happened kind of look. The older officer stepped forward. "Detective Rivers," he said. "You moved out here? Didn't recognize you without the uniform." Karen turned to him like she was trying to stop a slow-moving train. Wait, you know him?" "He's lying. He doesn't even." The officer held up a hand. "Ma'am, you need to calm down." Karen didn't calm down. She spun around, pointing fingers, accusing me of all sorts of nonsense. Said I faked the badge. Said I broke into my own house. Said I had suspicious guests last week. Those guests? My brother and his wife from Florida. I didn't say anything else. Just handed the officer my ID and property documents. Everything lined up. Everything was real. But nothing about Karen's story did. And in that moment, the whole situation flipped. Just like that. What started with flashing lights and accusations had now turned into something far more serious for her. And the best part? She didn't even see it coming. The first time I saw Karen, she waved at me with a fake smile and a clipboard in her hand. I had just pulled into my new driveway after a long drive from the city. The sun was setting behind the hills, casting a golden light across my new front yard. Quiet. Peaceful. Just what I wanted. She walked right up to the truck window before I could even turn off the engine. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said sweetly. "I'm Karen, president of the HOA." I gave her a polite nod, thinking maybe she was just being friendly. She glanced at the trailer I was towing and frowned. "You'll want to move that as soon as possible. We have rules about things like that." I hadn't even unloaded my stuff yet. Over the next few days, the peaceful country vibe started to shift. Karen seemed to appear out of nowhere. Every time I stepped outside, there she was. Pretending to walk her dog. Pretending to check her mailbox. Always looking. Always watching. Then came the printed notices. At first it was small things. The paint on my mailbox was non-compliant. My trash cans were visible from the street. My truck violated noise ordinances. It was like she had a rulebook for everything, and I was breaking all of it. But here's the thing, none of it was true. My truck was registered and quiet. My trash cans were exactly where the last owner kept them. And the mailbox? It had been there since 1995. Still, I stayed polite. I didn't argue. I figured she'd get bored and back off. I was wrong. One morning I found her standing near my backyard fence, phone out, taking pictures. I stepped outside. "Everything okay?" I asked. She jumped, clearly not expecting to be caught. "I'm just doing my job," she said quickly. "HOA inspection. You'll be getting a notice about that shed." The shed? It was built by the previous owner and had a permit hanging inside. But Karen didn't care about permits. She cared about control. It became a pattern. Every week, a new complaint. A new letter in the mailbox. A new set of photos taken from behind bushes or over fences. I caught her once trying to measure the distance between my driveway and her lot line with a tape measure. Another time, she stood in the middle of the street yelling at a delivery driver who had parked near my curb. "This is a private road," she screamed. It wasn't. By the second month, I had started documenting everything. I had a small camera by the front door. I saved every letter. Took screenshots of her texts. Because something about Karen didn't feel just annoying, it felt dangerous. She wasn't just a nosy neighbor. She had made it her mission to drive me out. She left nasty notes taped to my windshield. Reported my property as abandoned to the county. Claimed I was running a business out of my garage because I worked on my motorcycle on weekends. And through it all I said nothing. No yelling. No arguing. I just watched. Waited. Documented. Because I've seen people like her before, in courtrooms, in interrogation rooms, in victim statements. They push and push until someone snaps. But I wasn't going to snap. I was going to handle it by the book. Because that's what the badge on my belt had always meant. And Karen? Karen had no idea who she was really messing with. It started with a knock. Not a polite one. A sharp, fast knock that echoed through the house like it came with a warning. I opened the door and there she was, Karen. Clipboard in one hand, sunglasses too big for her face, and that same forced smile. She didn't even wait for me to say hello. "I just want to make sure you understand how we do things here," she said, stepping closer than necessary. "This neighborhood follows HOA rules strictly. We don't make exceptions." I nodded once. "I've read the guidelines." She laughed a little like I just told her a joke. "Oh well, the rules change sometimes. And some of us take them more seriously than others." Her eyes flicked over my shoulder into my house, like she was trying to see something. I didn't move aside. Then she pointed at the edge of my lawn. "That line of gravel over there? It's about 4 inches onto the community strip. You'll need to remove that by the end of the week. I'd hate for you to get a fine this early." I looked at the gravel. It wasn't even new. It had probably been there longer than she had. She handed me a printed warning. "Also, your front light fixture isn't HOA approved. Too modern." Then she spun around and walked off like she'd just won a battle. From that day it was like she had radar for anything she didn't like. If I parked my truck slightly to the left, I'd get a notice. If I had guests over, she'd walk past slowly, counting vehicles. One afternoon I caught her standing across the street, arms folded, just watching as I fixed a fence panel. Didn't say a word. Just stood there like a scarecrow with a grudge. Another day I was grilling in the backyard when she peeked through a gap in the fence. Her head literally bobbed up between the slats. "You can't use charcoal out here," she snapped. "It's a fire risk." "It's propane," I said, not even surprised anymore. She disappeared after that. But the next day I got another notice taped to my mailbox. "Unauthorized backyard structure." She meant the grill. I checked the HOA handbook again. Nothing in it banned propane grills. Nothing about gravel. Nothing about porch lights or trucks. She wasn't enforcing rules. She was making them up. It got to the point where even my Amazon deliveries weren't safe. One driver told me a lady with a badge stopped him and asked what he was dropping off. She'd taken her power trip to a whole new level. And the worst part? The HOA board backed her up. Probably because she was the board. Or at least ran it like her own private kingdom. When I asked for a copy of the original property lines, she refused to provide them. When I asked for proof that the light fixture was against code, she said I'd need to attend the next compliance hearing. She treated every question like a challenge to her throne. But I didn't challenge her. Not yet. I just nodded, smiled, and made note of every word she said. Because I wasn't the one losing control. She was. And sooner or later she'd push too far. It started with small things. A note left on my door that read, "Please trim your hedges to HOA standard height." But there wasn't even a hedge on that side of the house. A day later she was standing across the street again, phone in hand, snapping pictures of my backyard through a crack in the fence. That's when I realized Karen wasn't just annoying. She was building something. Case. Her own private investigation against me. She began sending official-looking HOA letters almost weekly. One claimed my porch light was too bright for the neighborhood aesthetic. Another said my driveway created unsafe glare during sunrise. The best one? Your wind chimes may violate the neighborhood peace policy. I never saw anyone else get these notices. Just me. Then it escalated. I came home one afternoon and found a red sticker slapped across my garage door. Non-compliant property. Review required. Karen's handwriting was all over the back of it. She had written a full paragraph explaining how the paint on my garage was too reflective. It wasn't. It was beige. At this point, I decided to walk the neighborhood, just to see what the standard was. Guess what I found? Bright purple mailboxes, flamingo statues, even a house with a full jungle gym in the front yard. Not one of them had red stickers. Karen wasn't enforcing HOA rules, she was inventing them. One weekend I had friends over. Nothing crazy. Just a backyard barbecue, some music, some laughter. Around 7:30, Karen walked up to the fence and just stood there. Didn't say a word. Just stared at us through the slats, arms folded. Then she vanished. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. Keep it down. This is a residential area. HOA rules allow for quiet enjoyment of property. I didn't reply, but I kept the message, just like I had with all the letters and pictures. Things took a darker turn the next week. I was out back again working on my motorcycle. Nothing loud. Just tuning. When I went inside for a drink, I heard gravel crunching in the driveway. By the time I stepped out, Karen was halfway across my property, walking around like she owned the place. "Can I help you?" I asked. She acted surprised to see me. "Oh, just checking the boundary line. Your driveway seems to be spilling into shared HOA land." I stared at her. "There's no shared land here. This is private property. I have the title documents." She gave me that smug half-smile. "Well, maybe. But until we get a proper survey, I suggest you move that trailer of yours back a few feet." That trailer had been parked in the same place since day one. It hadn't moved an inch. I told her calmly to leave the property. She didn't move. Instead, she pulled out her phone and started recording. "I feel unsafe," she said loudly for the camera. "I'm being threatened." I didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stepped back and recorded her right back. She finally stormed off, yelling something about taking this to the board. That night, I reviewed the footage. Watched the whole thing again. The way she walked right onto my land. The way she staged that scene with her phone. It was clear now, Karen wasn't just a busybody. She was laying groundwork for something big. She wanted to trap me. Paint me as aggressive. Dangerous. A threat. But what she didn't know, what she still didn't know, was that everything she was doing was already in a file. Labeled. Dated. Logged. Because unlike her, I knew exactly how to build a case. One morning, I opened the front door and nearly tripped over a bright orange sign staked into my lawn. Immediate action required, HOA final notice. Karen had done it. She'd printed a fake citation and posted it like it was official government business. The reason this time? Unauthorized use of property for commercial purposes. I stood there, blinking at the paper in disbelief. According to Karen, me washing my own truck in my own driveway was somehow commercial activity. It would have been laughable if she wasn't getting bolder every day. I called the HOA office number listed on the paper. Straight to voicemail. A generic recording. Then it hit me, she'd made the number herself. That paper didn't come from a real office. Karen was the office. And she was spiraling. That same afternoon, 2 new notices showed up. One taped to my back fence and another slipped under my garage door. They were written in the same font, the same bold red borders. One accused me of disturbing the natural harmony of the neighborhood with excessive garage activity. The other? Violation, multiple vehicles parked with intent to sell. She was referring to my brother's truck and a friend's old Jeep, both parked for barely a night. Karen didn't want me gone. She wanted to break me. The next move was pure insanity. I heard yelling outside one morning and found her standing in front of 2 landscapers I'd hired to trim the trees out back. She had her arms spread wide, blocking them from entering the gate. "They can't be here," she snapped. "HOA approval is required for contractors. Didn't you read the handbook?" I stepped out calmly and said, "Karen, this is my land. I don't need your permission to trim trees." She laughed like I'd told her the sky was purple. "Oh, but you do. You just don't know it yet." The workers looked uncomfortable, unsure if they should stay or go. I told them, "Go ahead, fellas. I'll handle this." Karen whipped out her phone again and started recording. "You're threatening me," she said to the camera. "You're harassing me." But this time I had my phone already out. I turned the camera on her. "You stepped onto my property. You blocked my workers. You're the one recording without consent." She froze for half a second. But only half. "Fine," she said coldly. "You'll be hearing from our legal team." That night, she followed through, with a certified letter delivered to my door. The envelope looked formal, but the contents? A joke. It was a typed-up document titled Community Complaint Summary. No letterhead. No lawyer's name. No real signature. Inside were 6 pages of photos. Of my truck, my backyard grill, the motorcycle in my garage, and handwritten captions like, noise pollution risk. Potential hazard. Property devaluation. She even included a photo of me drinking coffee on my porch with a note that said, excessive loitering. I almost laughed. Almost. But I knew something dangerous was underneath all of this. She wasn't just being dramatic, she was trying to build the illusion of evidence. She wanted to present a version of me to the HOA or the police or the courts. Someone who didn't follow rules, someone reckless, unstable. I saw it so clearly now. She wasn't going to stop. Not unless someone stopped her first. It was a Saturday morning when it all came to a head. I was in my garage sipping coffee, sorting tools. The weather was perfect. Birds, breeze, no sign of Karen until the knock. Not at the door. At the side gate. Hard, rapid, and angry. I opened it slowly and there she stood, holding her phone like it was a weapon. You're going to regret ignoring the HOA, she snapped. Before I could reply, she raised the phone to her ear and dialed 3 numbers. Hello, yes, this is an emergency. There's a man on my property refusing to leave. He's becoming aggressive. I feel threatened. Please send someone quickly. She locked eyes with me the whole time. I didn't say a word. She hung up and gave me a smug little smile. They're on their way. Let's see how your story holds up now. I walked back to the garage. Quiet. Come. Set my coffee down. Picked up my badge case from the workbench. It had been a long time since I had to use it off duty. But today it was coming with me. 15 minutes later, the patrol car rolled in. Lights flashing. 2 officers stepped out. The younger one scanned the scene. The older one? I recognized him. Officer Harris. We'd worked a case together years ago. Karen rushed over to them, arms waving, pointing wildly. There he is. He forced his way onto my land. He won't leave. I told him I'd call, and now he's trying to intimidate me. Harris didn't say a word. He looked past her, straight at me. I gave him a small nod, then slowly pulled out my badge. Detective Rivers. Off duty. This is my property. This woman just made a false report and trespassed again. Everything went quiet. Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. Officer Harris stepped forward. Detective Rivers. Didn't know you moved out here. 6 months ago, I said. She's been escalating since day one. I've documented everything. Karen's face turned pale. She looked from Harris to me then back again. That badge is fake, she blurted. He's pretending. He's a fake. I calmly handed over my ID and department credentials. Harris took them, nodded, then turned to Karen. Ma'am, please take a step back. She didn't move. You're taking his side? Are you kidding me? I'm the one who called for help. The younger officer looked uncomfortable. He leaned over and asked Harris something quietly. I didn't hear what was said, but the reply was a slow, firm shake of the head. Harris turned back to Karen. Ma'am, calling 911 under false pretenses is a serious offense, especially when it involves someone's safety or property. Karen's voice was shaky now. I didn't lie. I thought he was trespassing. I was trying to protect the neighborhood. I held out a small folder. Here's a log of her visits, threats, photos she's taken of my house, and text messages she's sent. I've recorded video too. All time-stamped. All organized. Karen's expression collapsed. Her hands started shaking. I didn't mean for it to get this far, she stammered. I was just trying to make things better. Harris nodded slowly, not buying a word. Ma'am, place your phone on the ground and turn around. That's when she realized it was over. The moment her wrists were cuffed, the street fell silent. All the doors that had quietly cracked open during the commotion were now wide with watching eyes. They didn't even bother with the back seat. Karen sat in the patrol car, hands cuffed in front, face drained of color. Her head tilted down, but her eyes were darting around like she was still looking for a way out. The neighbors had come alive. One couple across the street stood on their lawn pretending to water plants, but their hose wasn't even on. Another guy leaned on his fence, phone out, recording quietly. Nobody was rushing to defend her. Nobody asked what happened. They knew. For months, they'd watched her storm around the neighborhood like she ran it, shouting at kids to stay off sidewalks, leaving notes on cars, calling code enforcement on harmless things like garden gnomes or lawn chairs. But today, the queen of the HOA had fallen, and she fell hard. Officer Harris returned my documents and gave me a short nod. We'll file the report. Charges will depend on what the DA sees in your file, but looks solid. I thanked him and watched as the cruiser pulled away, slowly, silently, carrying Karen away from the neighborhood she used to rule. But I knew it wasn't over yet. About an hour later my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A voice, shaky, older, introduced himself as the acting HOA vice president. He cleared his throat a few times before saying, "Mr. Rivers, I just wanted to apologize for everything that's happened." I didn't say much. Just let him talk. He mentioned that Karen had overstepped. That she'd been warned internally before. That several neighbors had quietly filed complaints, but nobody ever took it further because she was persistent and intimidating. Now that she'd been arrested, the board wanted to correct the situation immediately. They offered to remove all citations from my property file. Said I'd be formally cleared, and would no longer receive notices without full board approval. It was a fancy way of saying, "Please don't sue us." I told him I appreciated the call. But inside I wasn't thinking about lawsuits. I was thinking about how deep Karen's grip had gone in this place, and how quickly that grip vanished once someone pushed back. That evening something strange happened. Neighbors started talking. One by one people I'd barely exchanged a word with came by to say hi, or drop off something. A man named Greg brought over homemade brownies and said, "We've been wanting to welcome you, just never got the chance." A woman from 3 houses down told me, "I hope you're staying. Things might actually get better now." Even the guy with the purple mailbox gave me a thumbs up from across the road. They weren't just being friendly. They were relieved. Relieved that someone finally stood up to her. Relieved that the badge she always tried to threaten me with turned out to be the very thing that brought her down. The next day the HOA's online portal was updated. Karen's name, gone. A new message appeared. "We are making structural changes to better serve the community and rebuild trust." I didn't say anything. Didn't post online. Didn't gloat. I just sat on the porch with my coffee and watched the neighborhood settle into something it hadn't been since I moved in. Quiet. No more notes. No more fake violations. No more sideways stares from the house across the street. But I kept the folder. Every photo. Every text. Every video. Because people like Karen don't disappear. They wait. And if she ever decided to come back, I'd be ready. A week passed. Then 2. Karen's house sat quiet. No movement, no SUV pulling in and out 10 times a day, no porch light left on through the night like some kind of watchtower. The windows stayed dark. Curtains drawn. Mail piling up in the box. Rumors started to float around. Someone said she'd been formally removed from the HOA board. Someone else claimed she'd been slapped with a restraining order. Another neighbor mentioned seeing a for sale sign go up late one evening and disappear by morning. Nobody knew for sure. But one thing was obvious. Karen wasn't coming back anytime soon. That morning I stepped outside to water the front lawn. The air was fresh. The kind of stillness that feels earned. Peaceful in a way it hadn't been since the day I moved in. Across the street, the woman who lived 2 doors down, her name was Martha, I'd only met her once, walked over with a mug of tea and a smile. "Feels different around here," she said, looking toward Karen's dark house. I nodded. Quieter. She sipped her tea. She did this kind of thing before, you know. Just never this bad. "Why didn't anyone say anything?" Martha gave a little shrug. "People didn't think it would matter. You tell her she's wrong and suddenly you're the one getting violations, notes, visits. Some of us just tried to stay off her radar." That explained a lot. Another neighbor, Jeff, waved as he walked past with his dog. "Hey detective," he called, grinning. "Good to have you on our side." The dog barked happily. The air smelled like cut grass in summer. It felt almost normal. But even with Karen gone, her presence lingered in strange little ways. One afternoon I found a leftover notice stuck between 2 fence boards. Weather faded but still legible. She had actually written up my garden hose for unsanctioned outdoor water use. I shook my head and tossed it in the trash. Later that night I went through the Karen folder again. Not to gloat. Just to review. I wanted to make sure I hadn't missed anything. Every photo. Every weirdly specific complaint. Every time she tried to twist the rules into a weapon. The final video, her standing on my driveway screaming into her phone, swearing I was a threat to the community, it still gave me chills. Because if I hadn't stayed calm, if I had reacted just once the way she wanted me to, that video would have been all she needed. She wasn't just a bad neighbor. She was dangerous because she knew how to turn lies into evidence. She just didn't know how to do it in front of someone trained to see through it. What stuck with me most wasn't her arrest. It was the silence that followed. The kind that makes you realize how much noise one person can cause. Not just shouting and notes and complaints, but fear. Quiet fear that makes people stop living normally in their own homes. And now, that silence felt like freedom. People were starting to smile more. Driveways were full again. Kids rode bikes without being stopped and reminded of the HOA's helmet policy. Someone put up a little garden gnome display out front, something Karen would have had a meltdown over. And me? I sat out front with my coffee each morning, badge tucked away, just a neighbor now, watching the sun rise over a street that finally felt like home. Karen had tried to turn this place into her kingdom, but she forgot something. You don't get to make the rules when the law already lives next door. The days kept rolling by, peaceful and slow, almost too quiet. Then one evening, I noticed a black sedan parked near the end of the block. Tinted windows. Engine off. It sat there for almost an hour. No one got out. At first, I didn't think much of it. Could have been a delivery driver, someone waiting on a friend. But the next night, it was there again, same car, same spot. Old instincts kicked in. I stepped out casually, walked toward my mailbox. As I passed the sedan, I glanced in. The figure inside quickly turned away. Feminine silhouette. Blonde hair. Karen. I didn't react. Just walked back inside and checked my front camera footage. Zoomed in. License plate was different. Out of state. But the way she ducked when I passed? No doubt in my mind. She was back. Not with notes or warnings. Not with fake citations or long complaints. She wasn't knocking this time. She was watching. The next few days I noticed small changes. My trash cans, which I always placed neatly on the side, were suddenly dragged a few feet into the street. The motion light on my garage kept turning on around 2 a.m. One morning I found a pile of birdseed dumped across my porch steps, probably meant to attract pests. This was her new game. No more HOA. No more authority. Just quiet little moves meant to provoke. To scare. But fear? That wasn't going to work. I reviewed all the footage. Labeled every clip. Logged the time. Cross-referenced it with neighborhood camera feeds where I could. Then I made a single phone call. Not to the police. To a judge. One I'd worked with for years. Explained the situation. Explained the history. Explained that Karen had been arrested, had lost her position, and now appeared to be watching my house from a distance and tampering with my property at night. He didn't hesitate. 3 days later, I had a restraining order signed and ready. I waited until she parked again. Didn't approach. Just called the local deputy on shift. Gave them the order. They showed up within 10 minutes. Quietly. Professionally. Walked up to her window and tapped twice. I watched from the porch as she tried to argue her way out of it. Hands flying, face flushed. But the officer stayed calm. Handed her the paperwork. Told her clearly, she was to stay 500 feet away from my property at all times, She didn't take it well. But she left. This time for good. Since then, no sightings. No cars parked for hours. No birdseed. No late-night light triggers. Just quiet. One afternoon, I was washing my truck when a teenager rode by on a bike and slowed down. "Hey," he called out. "You're the guy that got Karen arrested, right?" I smiled. "Something like that." He gave me a thumbs up. "Thanks, man. She made me cry once, 'cause I parked my scooter wrong. Glad you're here." That's what stuck with me. It wasn't just about me. Karen had made everyone feel like they were walking on glass. Every neighbor, every kid, every visitor. But the second someone stood up, the whole street started breathing again. Not because I wore a badge, but because I didn't let fear control the block anymore. The mailbox didn't have a letter in it that day, just a folded napkin pressed between the metal and the flap. I pulled it out slowly. One line, written in shaky black ink. "I'll be back." No name. No details. Nothing else. Just a message that didn't feel like a joke. I looked up and scanned the street. Clear skies. Birds chirping. Kids riding scooters near the corner. But something in the air had changed again. That same old heaviness, the one Karen used to bring with her, was creeping back like smoke through a window you thought you'd shut tight. I didn't panic. Just went inside, added the note to the file, and checked all the cameras. There was no footage of anyone approaching the mailbox. Nothing on the doorbell cam, nothing from the street view motion sensors. Either they timed it perfectly or someone else had helped her. That was the part that made my stomach turn. What if she wasn't working alone anymore? Karen had burned a lot of bridges in this neighborhood, but people like her always manage to find others who feed off the same bitterness. All it takes is one other person who thinks rules are power, and suddenly the whole pattern starts again. I reinforced the security system. Not just cameras. Alerts, motion triggers, automated lights. If anyone stepped foot within 20 feet of my home, I'd know it before they made it to the porch. And still I didn't tell anyone. Not the HOA. Not the board. Not even the neighbors who'd started waving every morning and calling me by name. Because this wasn't about a group. It was personal now. She wanted a war of nerves, a game of pressure. The kind where you don't know if the knock at your door is a delivery or something worse. But what she didn't realize is, I've played that game before. And I always play to finish it. A few nights later I got home late. Around 11:40 p.m. The neighborhood was asleep. Porch lights off. Just the hum of crickets and the faint click of my boots on concrete. Then I saw it. A shadow near the edge of my backyard fence. So motionless. Like someone was crouched low trying not to be seen. I didn't say a word. Didn't move fast. Just slid my hand down to my side and stepped quietly toward the garage door. From the corner of my eye, I saw the figure shift. Not run, just reposition like they didn't know I had spotted them. I stepped into the garage, flicked the switch, and let the lights flood the driveway. Then I turned the camera system on full display mode. 8 different angles glowing on the monitor. And there, camera 6, was the figure in motion climbing through the bushes and slipping away between houses. Not Karen. Someone younger. But it, face obscured. But they knew the layout. They knew the blind spots. Or at least they thought they did. I saved the footage, filed the report. Quietly. No sirens. No lights. No panic. Because if Karen wanted to play this out like a long game, she was going to find out just how long I could wait. She used to be the one setting the rules around here. But now all she could do was leave napkins and send shadows. And the truth was, she wasn't the scariest thing to ever knock on my door. Not by a long shot.